So it is January, and in most of the Northern Hemisphere, that means it's cold, and will likely be cold for quite some time. As a kid, it's easy to see only the good parts of winter. You see snowmen, tobogganing, hot cocoa, ice skating, cuddling up with a warm blanket and a good book while the snow falls outside. That magical moment when the snow has just fallen and it's sparkly and everything seems extra quiet and still. But once you hit adulthood, you encounter ice storms and slush and shoveling driveways and brushing snow off your car before work every morning. And why can nobody ever find the right lane on the highway? And it feels like this winter is never going to end. I have struggled with that myself for a while, and last year when the seasonal depression was starting to hit and I was feeling like, oh no, winter. Ugh. I decided that I would make it an intentional season. I wanted to find some ways to actually enjoy the winter more, despite the mounds of snow and sleet and slush and crappy drivers on the road. And very conveniently, just as I was looking into this idea, Kramer on Living Anachronism put out a video about medieval fantasy in winter. What would a fantasy adventurer do in the winter, and how can we implement the same techniques and ideas into our own everyday lives to keep the adventurous spirit alive, even when there might not be much adventure to be had? It was very inspirational and gave me some great ideas that made my winter way more enjoyable. So I want to share with you my list of ideas, some of which is what Kramer suggested, but modified for my own situation, and other ideas I added from my own personal experience. I would also highly encourage you checking out Kramer's video, especially if you're more LARPing/reenactment oriented. So let's look at some ways to add some magic to the mundanity, some whimsy in the winter, if you will. Number 1. Build a cozy, immersive environment. This is the time of year to embrace the Danish concept of hygge and break out all the warm things, all the comfiest, coziest blankets you got, especially if they are homemade. I crocheted a thing that was supposed to be a winter maxi shawl, but on Hobbit-sized me, it's more of a throw blanket. So that's what I use it as. I keep it at work and drape it over my lap on cold days, and I am instantly more cozy, and it just adds an extra little sparkle to my environment. Also, candles make everything instantly more warm and cozy and makes you feel like you're in a fantasy setting. I am gradually building my candlestick collection despite having a little bit of limited space. I found this candelabra at HomeSense in the fall, which it's no antique, but antique brass candelabras seem to be few and far between and heckin' expensive. So this fulfilled my desire quite sufficiently and continues to help me build the opulent dark academia sanctuary of my dreams. And in the time of year where days are so short, the flicker of candles is so soothing and calming. So get thee some candles, light them safely, and enjoy the soft firelight as you imagine you're resting at a local inn, or studying some long-lost tome, or stitching a garment for some new adventure. And if for some reason you can't have candles in your living space, get some fairy lights and string them around. If you had white Christmas lights, pull them back out of storage and decorate your room. You can also buy battery-operated candles quite easily now, and they do a pretty good job of mimicking the real thing. So make your space as cozy as you can. This is the time of year where we all feel like hibernating, so make your den a place of comfort. Also, the same rule of cozy and low-key fantasy can apply to your wardrobe. This is the season for voluminous hoods and awesome layers. I've embraced cowls and layered looks, and when you do the color scheme right, it really does feel fantasy. I often go super basic with my favorite Skyrim Dark Brotherhood sweater from the Bethesda gaming store. It's super warm and comfortable, very casual fantasy aesthetic. The cowl is perfect for keeping my neck warm on a cold winter day, and it turns into a large hood that feels very fantasy. I wear it to work most days in the winter, and I have mended the sleeve cuffs several times to extend its life. If you're not quite ready to wear a cloak down the street, accessorize with a cowl or a large swooshy scarf. These are my favorite options. This one feels like a fantasy cowl and can be draped in any number of ways. This one is more of a traditional scarf style, but it comes from the Weta Workshop store and is the same fabric that was used to make the Fellowship cloaks in the Lord of the Rings movies, so it definitely ticks the box for fantasy vibes. And if it's sweater weather, it means that you can hide whatever fantasy tops underneath that you want. I have definitely worn my everyday fantasy tunics under my sweaters on numerous occasions. They've kept me toasty warm while secretly feeling a little less mundane. Number 2, take time to read. I think most of us spent time as kids curled up with a cozy blanket and a good book. So when you've got downtime, go back to that. Pull out that fantasy book you've been meaning to get started on for ever. Or go back to an old classic for nostalgia's sake. Christopher Lee used to read Lord of the Rings once every year, and what better time of year than when outdoors feels less like Hobbiton and more like the Pass of Caradhras. I love me a bit of Narnia or Middle-earth or the Ink World when the snow is raging outside. Or take the time to try some nonfiction. I have found some great titles over the last few years that have managed to feed my love of history and world building at the same time. Learning about practical history has given me a greater understanding of our modern world. Some of my favorite recent nonfiction reads include Consider the Fork, A History of How We Cook and Eat, Authentic Victorian Dressmaking Techniques, Radical Love by Zachary Levi, and Tall, Dark, and Gruesome, the autobiography of Christopher Lee. And to add an extra layer of fantasy aesthetic, put on a YouTube ambience playlist. There are so many out there, including Skyrim Taverns, Rivendell Study Rooms, The Great Hall at Hogwarts, and generic themes like Fairy Forest, Enchanted Lands, and Cozy Nook with crackling fire and quiet jazz. There's something about sitting down in a comfy spot with a hot beverage and a good book that no other feeling comes close to. And I know in today's fast-paced society we can sometimes feel guilty about taking time out of our day to just sit down and read, but you will not regret it. Taking time to read can boost your mental health, your critical thinking skills, your knowledge base, and creativity. It also reduces stress and helps you relax. So, curl up with a good book this winter. Number 3. Plan adventures for the warmer months. I know when there's piles of snow on the ground, summer can feel ages away, but looking ahead can actually help you feel less blah and helps the time pass faster. Have a look online for some local hiking trails, or if you know you'll have some weekends available in the warmer months, consider a little trip further afield. If you have a national park within easy travel distance, plan to see some natural wonders. Look at Ren fairs and Comic-Cons later in the year and start planning your costumes out now so you don't have a last-minute crafting crunch. In theory. And not all your future adventures have to be big. Maybe there's a local tea shop you've been wanting to try, or a theater production coming to town. It doesn't have to be a massive vacation, just plan something to look forward to once the winter fades away. Number 4. Enjoy some adventure-themed food and drink. Whether you are mostly into fantasy or mostly history, there is a wealth of recipes available these days. And the simplest of foods can make your day feel a little less mundane. This is the time of year to make all the soup and stew recipes you've saved on your Pinterest board, as well as all the baking recipes that were too hot to make in the summer. And believe me, nothing makes you feel more like a fantasy character than sitting down to a meal of hearty stew and rustic bread. I don't know why stew is that most quintessential food that everyone thinks of when they think fantasy meal, but it really does put you in the moment. And it is relatively easy to make and portion out for some prep ahead meals. If you're new to baking, check out Pinterest. There are loads of beginner recipes and easy options that are super tasty. I've linked some of my go-to favorites in the description if you want to check them out. Find something that fits your fancy, take advantage of the cold weather to bake some bread, muffins, cookies, or even a whole dang cake. And for beverages, anything hot and warming goes. Drink all the coffee, all the tea, all the hot cocoa. If it makes you happy and makes the winter less dull, go for it. And hot apple cider doesn't have to be just for the holidays. You can make up a small batch in very little time and you'll be happily sipping away. And I know most of my viewers are above the legal drinking age, so let's talk some cozy libations. I know that scientifically alcohol doesn't actually warm you up, but it sure can feel pretty cozy. Whether you prefer a simple dram of whiskey, a mulled wine, or a cocktail like a Brandy Alexander, there are lots of options for winter beverages. I recently started dabbling into the mulled/spiced wine game, and I love it. There is something comforting about hot spiced wine, even though some folks find it a little odd.
Tea, coffee, hot wine? Why offer me hot wine?
And there are tons of variations, whether you want a more classical taste like glühwein or glüg, or a more historical flavor like Hippocras. I made my first bottle of Hippocras last year. Super easy, and it was delightful. It was a totally unique flavor and made me instantly feel like I'd stepped back into history. So dig into those fantasy or historical cookbooks. For the fantasy inclined, I would recommend the Elder Scrolls cookbook. This is seriously one of my favorite cookbooks. And for the historically inclined, I would suggest Tasting History by Max Miller and How to Cook the Victorian Way with Mrs. Crocombe. Number 5. Find a new skill to hone. I was recently chatting with some of my fellow author friends, and we came to the conclusion that a lot of us are seasonal writers. When the weather is nice and sunny outside, we don't want to be indoors sitting at our computers. But when the weather turns cold and the days get short, that's when the creativity starts a-flowing. Most times. So take advantage of being indoors and learn a new skill, whether it's crochet, calligraphy, sewing, chainmail crafting, studying a new language, or whatever hobby makes your brain go, woohoo! Winter is my season for catching up on projects that got put on the back burner during the busyness of the summer, and I really have more time to dive into research, learn new skills, and level up the skills I already have. As an example, I might not be able to get up to the cabin to use my bow, but I try to get to my local archery range when I can to keep myself from getting too rusty. And I often tackle 1 or 2 sewing projects that I purposefully don't film, just so I can keep practicing and experimenting with those new techniques. And if you're feeling a little cooped up inside, try finding an outdoor skill to hone. Dust off those ice skates, pull those snowshoes down from the attic, try a new winter sport. You might find something that you really enjoy. I tried downhill skiing for the first time in 2019, and initially I thought, I'll give it a try, and I discovered that it is awesome. I got such a thrill from the adrenaline rush, and I can't wait to get back on the slopes again. Speaking of outdoor activities, number 6, spend more time in nature. Winter is here, we just gotta deal with it. It doesn't mean that we can't enjoy it. I think sometimes we forget how beautiful things are in the winter. When the snow covers everything and dampens the noise and the air feels peaceful, revel in the winter. Bundle up and go for walks along a local trail. Take time to listen to the sounds of nature around you. Take some birdseed and go bird watching. And to make it more special and more toasty, pack a thermos with your piping hot beverage of choice and bring it along. Sipping hot tea while hiking on a snowy trail is surprisingly nice and adds just an extra level of special to what could otherwise feel like a very mundane activity, aka going for a stupid walk for my stupid mental health. Number 7. Indulge yourself, darling. One of the bleakest parts of winter I find is that once New Year's is over, it feels like there's no special events to look forward to, no occasions or holidays to boost those happy hormones. It's just winter. Forever. So, we're gonna make our own special occasions. Looking online, there are international days of you name it. So go find some days and celebrate, whether it's National Chocolate Cake Day, National Snuggle a Chicken Day, Groundhog Day, National Margarita Day, or Thursday. Stop saving the fancy stuff for that mystical, special occasion and make your current situation special. You deserve it. Light the candle, drink the champagne, eat the chocolates, break out the bubble bath, and have a nice time. You are the main character of your story. Start treating yourself like it. Number 8. Make a summer self-care plan. Depending on what your day job is, summers can be incredibly busy and it can be hard to make time for yourself. Plan out now how you're going to take care of yourself so that you don't get to mid-July and go, I'm not enjoying this at all. This past year, I made my first summer self-care list with things like dance in the rain, eat ice cream by the water, and eat lunches outside and watch the horses. But also things like don't answer work texts when I'm off the clock, go to the gym regularly, and eat lots of fruits and veggies. Having this list and having it made up ahead of time really helped me to have an intentional, enjoyable summer with healthy boundaries that helped me balance a chaotic, busy schedule while still getting to have a fulfilling season. Number 9. Find time for stillness. The chaos of the holidays is over and we are still a long ways out from the chaos of summertime. So, make time for yourself and some peace and quiet. Over the past year and a bit, I have really come to appreciate the value of rest and quiet time. Even if you're not sleeping, lying down with either some quiet music or a calming podcast, just making some still time for yourself is vastly underrated in today's hustle society of go, 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 go. And a lot of the activities I mentioned earlier could be included in your still time. If you have some quiet time to yourself, put on a Skyrim Tavern playlist and knead some bread. Read a couple chapters while sipping a hot beverage while said bread is baking. Your quiet time can be whatever you want it to be, whatever helps your brain relax and reset. So I hope you enjoyed this little ramble about winter time, and if you have any other ways that you've made the long dark of winter more enjoyable, please share them in the comments below. I will be back soon with more geekery meets history sewing adventures, and in the meantime, stay warm and cozy, my friends. Number 7. Right off the bat.
Well, I mean, we can have some winter bloopers too.
I'll get there. I'm so professional. Taking time to read can boost your mental health, your critical skinking kills.
That was sad.
Or a more wow. I got through Glühwein and Glüg and tripped over historical flavor.
Blooper material.